Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull. We're just gonna get started with a little bit of the Geoguessr. Once I get these fucking windows in order. Remember to turn on recording because it's really a pain in the ass when I have to go back and use OBS to record the stuff off of YouTube that I want to clip. Okay, where the hell are my windows? Okay, there's one, and Twitch window, just in case. Get some new followers here. And here we go. World. Hello, world. Okay, I immediately think this is Russia. Yep. Бесплатная помощь. Это Россия. Trouble is, it's very easy to know when you're in Russia, but the thing is, there is rather a lot of Russia. Что это за дом? Это крутой. Ну, улица Матросова. А что это? Какое-то... С днем рождения... С днем рождения Катя. Вот. Это... Вот. Пожалуй, уже не твой день рождения, Катя. Но я тоже тебе желаю. Всего доброго с днем рождения. Okay. Well, we know the speed limit. And these gas things, that seems to be also a Russia-Ukraine sort of thing. You see them in Pripyat. Въезд закрыт. Ремонт. Under repair. Комплексное объединение Рус. Okay, definitely Russia. It's .ru. Ah. Somebody else has joined us. Hello, somebody else. Okay, we got a main drag coming up. Let me see, is that a sign that will tell us anything useful for our little quest? Doesn't look like it. Well, hello, Adam. Haven't seen you in a little bit. How you doing? You missed the first half of Communist Propaganda, Episode 4, A New Hope. But you have arrived in time for the exciting conclusion. Pavlovskaya Kurovka. Pyatirotchka. We are someplace in Russia. It could be pretty much anywhere. Вы готовы получить 20 подарков. And are you ready to receive 20 gifts? Guess it depends on the gift. Like, do I need a lot of storage space for it? It's pretty wild. I watched a thing from the National Archive that looked interesting a couple of weeks ago, and since then, I've been getting these wild-ass recommendations for like 1950s U.S. propaganda films. And so I decided, I had a little look at a couple of them, and I decided, obviously, they must be roasted. Okay. Somewhere in Russia. Автосервис. Cafe and produce. There's about half of it to go, I think. We're always happy to see you. Aww. And that's how I feel about my lovely audience. P3 Shiva3. Okay, we get street names, we just don't get any bloody town names. Come on, give me something. Автокомплекс на Советской. Insurance agency. Another of these Pyatirotchka. We'll buy your car. Come on, gotta have something. God, everything is fucking car related in this town. Selling cars, fixing cars, buying your shitty car off you. Like, and... well, oil change. That I did a double take for a second because masla in Russian also means butter. So this could look like a butter exchange, and it's like, why? Why are we exchanging butter? If you got butter, just fucking use it. Don't need to be trading it. Ah. Somebody else has joined us. Okay, we've got a bigger street coming up. Please, give us something here. I feel like this is like southern Russia someplace. But it's kind of hard to say for sure. I mean, definitely... it's definitely not Moscow. Moscow is in a little bit better shape than this. Baked Lays. Orthodox Church. And like, could we get a motorway or something? A roundabout. Sometimes you get directions on a roundabout. Bramzona. Okay, industrial estate. I always love an industrial estate. Yeah, I mean, this communist propaganda movie, it starts out with the head of the, this is like 1951, I think, head of the U.S. Information Agency is asked by these top military officers who are sitting there, in a totally not scripted exchange. Yeah, then one of them asks him, so why is it you call our propaganda information and their information propaganda? And he says, well, I have 20 working languages, and there are another 20 odd that I speak varying degrees of some of. And if you didn't know, I actually have an entire stream dedicated to that stuff, too. Give you the Discord for that as well. You see the link, I now have a Discord server. I have two of them. I have one for the language channel. I have one for the anarcho-communist shitposting channel that we're on now. That's for the language-related channel. Please to keep in touch, exchange ideas for streams and stuff. You know, if you have an idea for a video for me to roast, shit like that. It's there. There's not a whole lot there, but I got somebody who wants to help me understand how to set these things up, because I've never done a damn thing with Discord before. I know nothing about it. Oh, hold on, was that a sign? Oh, it's just a sign saying that we are leaving a built-up area. Come on, you gotta give me something here. Is this the town? I mean, they no longer have strictly secret towns. Every town has a name that is officially acknowledged. It's just that they have closed towns where you can't get in without an official permit. And if you're not from there, you can't get in full stop. So I would expect to see something telling me where the hell this is. Gazprom. Жизнь, помощь. Okay, an ambulance. Oh, hold on. Ambulances sometimes have information on this. Sometimes they're owned by the council or something. Скорая медицинская помощь. Let's see. Can we get directly... No, we can't get directly behind it, because it looks like that would be where the name of the municipality or whatever authority owns the ambulance would be. But it doesn't seem to be there. Everything around here is car related. If it's not car parts and oil changes, it's petrol. Like, is this all this town does? Is it inhabited only by cars? I mean, and if you're, like, driving long distance around here, do people, like, fucking put nails on the road just to drum up business, since their entire town depends on, auto parts? Okay, zebra crossing. Moskva, Kazan. Okay, finally. Okay, so we've got... It's a crossroads that can either go to Kazan or Moscow. Ну где черт находится Казань? Это как-то на юге, думаю. Рязань? А. Кубинка, Одинцово. Тамбов, Орел, Брянск, Курск, Воронеж, Пенза, Saratov, Kazan. Ah, hell, okay. So this is someplace that is a crossroads between these two places that are extremely far apart. Well, not extremely, but pretty far apart. I suppose it's considered nearby by Russian standards, though. Let's say Dzerzhinsk. 3.8 kilometers. Not bad. Considering that all I was going on was just the vague idea that it was probably halfway between on a road where you could turn one way and go to... Okay. That is probably the best score I've ever had in a small provincial Russian town. Oh, gee. 0% tolerance of drug activity. No loitering, standing, sitting, waiting, which is misspelled by police order. Fuck that. That's bullshit. Fuck that. So it looks kind of like Cincinnati, though. Definitely the U.S. I mean, I guess it could be Canada, but the hostility of that sign makes me think more U.S. Oh, yeah, U.S. Postal Service. Okay, we are someplace in the U.S. Got any street names? 69th. Nice. Okay. I mean, the buildings look like Cincinnati, but I don't think... We don't have a 69th Street in Cincinnati. Where... who has a 69th Street? Crandon and 68th. Let's go towards the tall buildings. You go towards the tall buildings, yeah. 312 area code. Mean anything to anybody? Okay. CTA, we're in Chicago. Jackson Park Express, 67th. Okay. Yep. That area code did not ring a bell, but CTA certainly does. Okay, so 68th and Brandon. '18th, 31st, 55th, 67th, 67th, 65th, Michigan State, Prairie, Calumet, Anthony, Champlain, Langley, Dante, Ridgeland, Krieger. Knew it looked familiar. Euclid, Jeffrey, Chapel. Oh, or was it Crandon? Hold on. Might have been Crandon. $197 meters. 49.99. We're doing well. Okay. We're in some kind of park. Genbaku Junchosha Mehonga. This is the Atom Bomb Memorial. Is this the Atom Bomb Memorial in Hiroshima? Well, let's see. Ebayama. Oh, ちょっと違うと思うけど。Wait. Okay, if I understand that correctly, they dropped a fucking atom bomb to target a bridge? That's the... Yeah, that seems fucking excessive. Fucking hell. To take out a bridge. Oh no, this was Nagasaki. Well, hell. Okay. That's their fucking excuse. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm gonna say South America almost certainly. Though, I guess it could be Italy. José Vasconcelos. Calle José Vasconcelos. Okay, Spanish-speaking place. Almost certainly in South America. Though I reserve judgment until I see a stop sign. Por favor, no tirar basura. Don't throw rubbish in our yard, please. Alto. Okay, we are in Central America. When the stop sign says Alto, you are not in South America. They say pare in South America, whether it's Brazil or a Spanish-speaking country. I imagine they say stop in Suriname and French Guiana. Well, I'm not sure about French Guiana. I mean, I would imagine being a French-controlled territory that it would follow EU rules, and it would say stop. Okay. Now all my fucking windows are out of whack. Vasconcelos Gottfried. Okay, this could be Mexico. It could be kind of anywhere in South America. I mean, in Central America, though. Fracción VICP, código postal 85139. Oh, ni idea. I don't know postcodes in Latin America. In Chile, nobody knows their postcodes because they're like 15 digits. Swimming for babies, Villa Itzon. Ni idea. Efano in departamento equipado. I mean, I tend to think Mexico. Oh, we were just here, weren't we? Bank sushi. Is this a thing they do? The bank sushi, insurance company tacos? Naikem. Agrocurita. Bueno, ¿dónde estamos en esta weá? Alguna bandera, alguna weá, pues weón. En venta previa cita, for sale by appointment. The palm trees tell me it's towards the southern end of Mexico, if it's Mexico. It could be Costa Rica, it could be Guatemala. Kunanay choro. Wherever this is, this seems to be a fairly expensive sort of neighborhood. There don't seem to be any connections on the electrical box that weren't like officially permitted. When you go like in working class neighborhoods, Sonora en la PEV, Lago del Nainari, Museo, okay. En alguna parte del estado de Sonora, tal vez, weón. Ciudad Obregón, tal vez. Vamos a ver. 3 kilometers, Jesus. I'm doing really well with just wild punts. I mean, first the Russia one, now this one. I'm doing really well today. Okay, I'm gonna say we're... Yep, Russia. Back in Russia. Car wash, один помещение. Space to let. The scuffed look of a Russian provincial city. Гостиница Рус. Улица Строителей. Okay, yeah, we're in Russia. I mean, that hotel name clinches it. I have a feeling you would not get far naming your hotel that in Ukraine. Certainly not at this point. Chop Zapad. Химчистка. Chemical purging. Actually, dry cleaning. Supermarket. Башнефть. Башнефть. Может быть, это Башкортостан? Maybe we're in Bashkortostan. Soul of meat. Our meat gets fresher every time. I don't quite know how that works. There is a certain point where it's no longer fresh meat, it's actually just kind of a confused animal. Автозапчасти, крепеж, ветеринарная клиника. Tires. They'll sell them to you, they'll put them on for you. Our rate can do more. What, more than just, like, take money out of your pocket? Because that's what rates usually fucking do. Stop. Dobra cien. Uralsk. Uralsk. Okay. That would fit in with Bashkortostan, just because it has... I've never heard of the town, but it has Ural in the name. Ufa. Okay. Magnitogorsk, Kumiertau, Baimak, Bulgakova, Благовещенск, Дюртулы, Нефтекамск, Куяново, Кубязи, Атамановка, Красный Ключ. Yeah, that's kind of a neat town name. Red Key. I wonder what the history is there. Ильмурзина. Архангельская. Булгакова. Уриказган. Дергачевка, Кузьянова, Петровская, Макарова, Верниткулова, Уразбаева, Стерлитамак. Окей, but Первоуральск. Это мы ищем. Where the hell is Первоуральск? Новоефимск. Новоефимцев, Тиманова, Красная Горка. Где? В каком хрене находится Первоуральск? Where the hell is Первоуральск? And am I totally wrong about it being in Bashkortostan? I'm still leaning towards it being in Bashkortostan because of Bashneft. I wish this little map window would be bigger. Tyumen, Ufa. Someplace around here. 411 kilometers. And where is it? Is it not? It's in Sverdlovskaya Oblast. On the other hand, not too far from Bashkortostan. I was not entirely far off with that. 3796, not bad. 22,861. Okay. And that concludes the Geoguessr part of the evening. Okay, BGM off. Adjust audio output as we go into roasting mode. Right, that's the window I needed. Okay. See if there's a short Nah, let's just go. Let's dive straight into it. I'm gonna move it back since you missed some of it. We'll go back because the thing they were talking about, that what this guy's been doing is to answer the question of why he calls their propaganda as opposed to his propaganda, which he calls information. He's showing clips from Soviet films about the end of World War II and that that feature the U.S. military. And the idea is that it's propaganda because it points out like wild things like that there was racism in the World War II. Or that people, generals play the market. And shit like that. And, yeah, bit of a content warning as well. And also, because it points out that U.S. occupation soldiers did really horrible things to Koreans.
They do about the same amount altogether.
Okay. So here he's talking about how the Soviet Union does way more propaganda, and the way he manages to make the U.S. look completely outclassed is by including everybody. So it's not just the Soviet Union, it's all the, Eastern Bloc states, the China, the DPRK, and these clandestine stations. Of course, if you included the U.S. ones in the comparison, the U.S. satellite states in the comparison, it would look rather different.
As the Soviet Union does. These 317 hours are done by Communist China. Then 125 hours each week are done by the Far East orbit. That means to say North Korea and North Vietnam. And then
okay. So this is after the U.S. had already divided Vietnam. Okay, I was wondering if this was at a point when they would also have been including Vietnam in there. I'm not sure what. Does it say what year this was? This was made literally by the fucking CIA, incidentally. Let's see. Late 1950s. Okay, that explains it.
There's 108 hours now being done by various clandestine radio stations, broadcasters, who are situated.
This is George Allen, head of the U.S. International Propaganda Agency, the U.S. Information Agency.
In one place or another, claiming that they are, for example, the South Korean broadcast. They're actually broadcasting from North Korea, but announcing that they are a South Korean broadcast. That's where the clandestine comes in. So you see that...
Oh, you mean, and of course the U.S. would never do something like that. The U.S. would never, have an entire radio station that they present as a Cuban radio station that is actually completely run by the U.S. government.
The Soviet Union uses,
for example,
all the satellite countries to do
it's called Radio Marti.
Outside the communist orbit, as well as the Soviet broadcasts themselves.
Mr. Allen, I wonder if you can amplify what you said about the Soviet distribution of magazines and books abroad. I've seen some...
Yeah, that's right. They've got books and magazines too, man. I mean, what are we gonna do about the fucking books and the magazines? Game over, Matt.
Figures on that. Do you happen to have them in mind?
Well,
Well, do you happen to have him in mind? Like, he hasn't prepared the entire thing for this fucking film that they invited these various senior military officers to, and set up all the camera crew, and he's got all his fucking charts, and he thinks that he just might have... Like, yeah, like he's like any of this is left up to
I have
chance.
some figures about the publication of the magazines. They are putting out 85 periodicals in 30 different languages. That periodicals being magazines and quarterly reviews and things of that sort. As far as books are concerned,
So, okay, so a lot of this is kind of just standard, like, cultural stuff that pretty much everybody puts out?
last year they poured 100 million books into the free world.
They usually sell at very low prices.
Yes,
don't they?
usually, or they give them away.
Stalin, I wonder if you would discuss for us the main propaganda themes of the communists today, sir.
I have a chart here, which I'll
Oh, yeah, okay.
show you on that. These are just taken.
Yeah, we're supposed to think, do you by any chance happen to have these things in mind? And look, I mean, think about what it took to get something like that printed. That is clearly multiple colors. I mean, it's black and white because they have black and white film. It's the late 50s. But this is clearly, that's red. They've got a background color. It's printed in 3 colors. Yeah, you know, with the hamstick and all that shit on there. Yeah, like this, like anything about this is casual.
5 sample propaganda themes of the Soviet Union. One of them is that it's the United States that puts up the Iron Curtains, while the Soviet Union seeks closer relations with everybody, that we are the people who have the real Iron Curtain, and they just want to embrace the world.
Well, I mean, there is that you can't say there's nothing to that. Like, I mean, I pointed this out when we were looking at the first half of this. The Soviet Union, actually, we know from declassified documents, made an offer for a unified Germany with, in exchange for it had to be neutral and UN sponsored, UN monitored all Germany elections. More or less the same deal that was supposed to be in place for Korea and Vietnam. And in all of those cases, the U.S. was the one to refuse. So it's not entirely wrong. And of course, when we're talking, if this is the late 50s, there's no Berlin Wall yet.
Secondly,
Okay. The U.S. is warmongering. Wow, how could anyone get that idea? And what gets me about this is, see, this is made by the CIA. This is intended for the U.S. military. This is probably people with security clearance high enough to know that what the internal U.S. assessment at the time was, which was that the USSR was not any kind of a military threat because they got wrecked in the last war and they had no interest in trying to start any kind of shit until they recovered from it and made all sorts of unilateral disarmament offers that the U.S. knocked back.
they're constantly saying that that the United States is a warmongering country, that we want to bring about a world war, whereas the Soviet Union seeks peace and disarmament. They say that United States capitalism can no longer compete with progress under Soviet socialism, that they're going ahead of us in production.
Oh, well, I mean, that is mostly an internal propaganda theme of theirs. And of course it was the subject of a lot of jokes in the Soviet Union. Like, I mean, one popular Soviet joke that I remember was, okay, so the scientist, he wants to get an exit visa. And they deny it, and he says, why? Well, you have all sorts of classified information as a scientist. And he goes, but we're 10 years behind the U.S. in every relevant aspect. And the guy goes, yeah, that's the secrets that you're aware of.
They also say that
That's why we can't let you out.
Surpass the United States and its allies in growth and strength. and also that the United States is fighting a losing battle to maintain its colonialist hold on the new countries of Asia and Africa.
New countries. Yeah, like new countries. What the fuck are new countries? They've been there for a long time. The societies have existed for thousands of years. It's just that they were recently decolonized. Actually, I mean, it would have still been going on at the time of this. I mean, certainly Vietnam hadn't been completely decolonized. The U.S. was still occupying half of it.
That we are the imperialists and we are trying to dominate those countries.
Well, I mean, at that time, through French
But
proxies.
their national spirit will survive.
Mr. Allen, these are all examples of communist propaganda successes. Aren't there some things which they can't cover up even with their highly touted propaganda?
Okay, so they're successful. The things that actually are fairly tolerably accurate are the success. Okay, let's see what the failures are. Let's come on.
For example, just very recently we've seen the very bad effect on the Soviet public relations posture in all countries, particularly in Europe and the United States, by the execution of the former Prime Minister of Hungary, Nagy. There have been tremendous demonstrations now in Paris and London and Bonn and other places by socialist and left-wing fellow traveler people who are terribly annoyed against the Soviet Union because of the execution of Nagy, and there's nothing that their propaganda...
Interesting that they acknowledge this internally, of course, because, you know, the line that, that people like this took officially was that all of the leftists, all leftists everywhere are, you know, totally just puppets of Moscow and Beijing and Pyongyang somehow, as if they all agreed on everything already.
line can do about it. They've just lost a great deal of support.
Stalin, aren't the communists using film a lot in this propaganda
Oh, wait.
deal?
Yes,
They're using film a lot. We already did that. We already looked at the films. We kind of made that point. What we're gonna okay, but maybe this means we're gonna get some film clips instead of these boring white guys talking. That'd be
they
cool.
are both documentary type of films and entertainment films. And in the entertainment film field, they have recently been very active. As a matter of fact, very recently, they won an international award at Cannes in France. The film is called The 41st.
Oh, yes, I've heard about that film. I believe it's about the girl who's a Red Army sniper and the boy who's a White Russian officer. They're shipwrecked and fall in love. But they have a quarrel over communism, and that proves fatal. Let's see what happens in this communist love story.
It sounds like a good film, actually. I mean, it seems like even he can't deny that sounds like... I mean, I'd watch that. I'd never heard of this. I thought I'd... You know, I took a course in Soviet film at university. I thought I would have heard of this, but...
Safe from the shipwreck, out of the sea, across the ice, comes the girl, a Red Army sniper, and her prisoner, a White Russian officer. She has killed 40 men with her rifle.
Got lots of fat.
Yes, but will it burn?
On the Volga, we often use it. Burns better than wood.
She's English.
Why couldn't the others have got through as well?
Might be better to...
The
get
cross
out
worn by
these
the
wet
man
clothes.
is another communist identification
switching
of the
it in?
enemy.
All right, go ahead then. Forget I'm here.
You first. I'll wait outside till you're ready.
Don't be an idiot. The wind's still raging. You're liable to catch your death out there.
I was only trying to save you embarrassment.
Wow, they sound so posh, too. This is like... This is such a posh accent. These, like, two, like... Not even Cockney or something? They sound like they just got done with the
You
hunt.
and your high and mighty ways make me sick. This is the front line. not a drawing room.
Okay.
Go on, what are you waiting for? Anybody'd think you were shy.
The dubbing quality is not bad either. Yeah, okay, I want to see this, actually. I wonder, Must-Film has a YouTube channel, and they've got a lot of full-length movies on there. I wonder if that's on there.
The communist girl, eager to fight, now finds her prisoners sick and discouraged.
The never-ending tide of hatred and death. It's all just a gory nightmare.
No one likes it, but it's the price of progress.
Yes, and you can have it. As far as I'm concerned, all I want is peace. And my books.
In other words, you don't care if our enemies scheme to destroy us. So long as you can read your books, others can go hang.
I say let them. Damn it! Why should I take the world on my shoulders? Besides, what has the world done for me? Search
As
for
a
the
man
truth
who
and
opposes
He
communism,
claims his right.
our
Who's
hero
the judge?
becomes confused.
There are so many truths. The German, the Russian, the Mujik, the ruling classes, the Bolshevik. I say, to hell with a lot. I don't care what happens. Leave me alone. I'm out of it all, and I won't soil my hands again.
What you're saying is others should poke in the mud for your honor.
That's their own affair. I don't care. I'm no longer interested.
Okay. Wow, I mean, his hair's blow-dried very nicely for being shipwrecked on a fucking desert island.
I see.
Mariutka, don't be angry. Wait. I don't mean to hurt you. Don't you understand? I'm sick at heart, exhausted. Let's get away from here. Go to the boxes. I've got a summer house in Sukumi. If only you'll go with me. I'll help you to study. I'll be good to you, I promise you.
You're asking me to turn my back on my conscience, cast aside my obligations, loll around on cushions, munching candy bought with the blood of my comrades.
Don't be so melodramatic.
Oh, yes, I forgot your class likes to hide ugliness by pretending it doesn't exist.
Well, yeah! Yeah! You got me there.
Is that all?
Well, no, there's more that sucks about your class.
So much hot air and forget that you're a woman.
It's been thrust on me by people like you. How dare you think I could so far forget myself as to desert my cause and lie around your house in idleness like any slut, you blasted son of an aristocrat?
That's about all I can stand. Stick to your damn duck. Scum that you are.
Stick to your duck? She's got a duck?
It's lucky for you that there's such a thing as chivalry towards your sex. I hate you!
Yeah. I mean, I have to say the dubbing quality on the whole is remarkably good. Very good voice acting.
Why did I have to fall in love with you? You've tortured me, destroyed my peace of mind, but I can't fight you, I can't.
Don't cry, my darling. Don't turn your back on me.
I thought you would understand. You were cleverer than I was.
Sorry I failed you, my darling. Don't cry. It'll work out all right, I promise. Trust me again. Present, let's forget it. Bye. I love you so much. You love me too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sick of waiting to be rescued.
Her love blooms when
Fishermen
he
don't
embraces.
turn up in the next 3 days. I'll commit suicide.
Hey, where's all that courage I credited you with, huh?
Shows what a demoralizing effect you have on me. I should have had more sense. Yeah. You and your wishful thinking. I can only hope I brought you down to earth a bit. Have I?
Oh, you have.
So you admit you were wrong?
Yes, it's all clear as day to me now. Thanks to you, I've stopped fumbling at last. I was wrong to think I could go back to my books. There's work to be done. There's a life to be lived. And damn me, I live it.
Well, I don't know. I like communism and my fucking books.
I warn you, I'm no longer meek and mild. From now on, I'm a man with a purpose.
Oh yeah, because that was there you go. That's the reputation of the White Army right there, meek and mild.
You might at least tell me what that is.
All right. As I see it, my country needs me now more than ever. Idealism must give way to realism. For it's plain that if her destiny is to be left in your hands, I dread to think what a mess you'd make of it. By all that's holy, a sail! A sail!
The fisherman! Ah!
Oh, okay. So this is... Okay, 37 minutes out of... Okay, this is really the tail end of this thing. We might be able to get into another one.
We've got to give them a signal.
What for? They're coming here anyway!
They could be going further east. Get the gun and fire a shot quick. Hurry!
Got it! Hands up!
Don't be an idiot, fire it. Then it gives them free.
Who is it? Who are they?
I'm not sure they're fishermen at all. You'd better fire another shot.
They're not! They're gone! Hey there! Hooray! Yeah! Come on! Yeah! Hey!
Stop! Stop! You're my prisoner! You shan't escape again! Stop!
Mariutka. 41st victim of her rifle. And the title of the picture.
Mr. Allen, how can we compete with this communist propaganda in view of the fact that the communists can resort to any deceit, whereas we have to stick to the truth?
I didn't realize that this was a comedy.
I think, first and foremost, that we should do more of what we've just been doing this afternoon. That is, we should recognize...
Like, where was the deceit in that movie they just showed? I mean, it's probably a fictitious story. I don't know. It's the first I've heard of it. Maybe it is based on some sort of actual events that happened during the Civil War. But, I mean, at base, it is about a sort of a story that could theoretically have happened between, if people on either side got shipwrecked in some deserted island or something like that in the middle of the war, and how that might play out. I mean, that does not entirely strike me as propagandistic at all. I mean, to a certain extent it is, but it isn't crudely so. I mean, the reason I imagine it got a prize at Cannes, which isn't exactly known for, I mean, I can't imagine in the 50s it was different. It's not exactly known for loving, like, communist propaganda, is that the White Army soldier actually seems to be, an actual person. Yes, they managed to describe, the way he states his, ideological views sounds the way somebody on that side would probably say it. It's just good. I mean, from the look of it, it just seems like it's a well-written movie.
Soviet propaganda, when we see it or hear it, sometimes it's very subtle, and sometimes it's in a disguised form. But most Americans don't realize how much of it is being put out, or what it is when they see it. Now, secondly, we must do more ourselves. that is more counter-propaganda and more presenting the story of the United States and the American way of life and the democratic principles that we stand for.
Like segregation and lynchings and all, misogyny and just massive exploitation and union busting and all that wonderful stuff. Yes, just
We are doing a great deal. This afternoon we've only considered what the Soviets are doing in this field, but I haven't talked about what we are doing, and don't think we've been folding our hands and doing nothing. We haven't done as much as we should because we Americans are not inclined very much in the propaganda field, but we've realized that it now has to be done, and we are doing more of it. But thirdly, and perhaps more important, we should do everything we can to deprive the communists of fertile ground in which to plant their propaganda. Now that means, as far as the government is concerned, that the government should follow policies which make the United States admired and respected and liked as much as we can. Know that there are many cases in which we can't please everybody. Quite true. But our policy should have a public relations aspect to them and should win friends. But more than that, each of us individual Americans should behave, act when we are dealing with foreigners.
Yeah, well, this is actually a film made by the CIA that you're coming in on towards literally the tail end of. This is, there's like, I think, a minute and 20 seconds left in it. This is a movie made by the CIA to try to explain about Soviet propaganda. And the main thing that what's great is that they don't even try to counter any of it, because the stuff that they point out that they're so annoyed with is stuff that just points out stuff about the U.S. that's true, that sucks. Yeah, I mean, this is the National I watched something from the National Archives YouTube channel that showed up in my recommendations a little while ago, and ever since then they've been recommending me this stuff. And so I started looking at some of it, and some of it is eminently roastable. Oh, and thank you for the follow.
That makes foreigners like us as individual Americans and respect us. And then these signs like Yankee Go Home, they'll continue.
Well, yeah, except part of the reason you got those signs up is that you're invading people's countries and they don't want you there.
But they won't have fertile ground, they won't catch on if all of us Americans, civilian and military, behave in the way that we should.
Well, I mean, I would imagine it did. I mean, this seems to be made for military personnel. It's like, I mean, the examples of, like, Soviet propaganda are all directed towards, like, pointing out bad things that the U.S. military does, which is probably, and, I mean, it's all, like, this guy's talking to 3 senior U.S. military officers. So, I mean, I would imagine so. I mean, this is stuff that they would, that it was intended as sort of domestic propaganda, particularly directed at the armed forces.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen, for this very interesting discussion.
Okay. And of course, that whole being able to fool everybody all the time was sort of a lament from the point of view of the U.S. Information Agency. Well, perhaps this can contribute to that. Who knows? Okay. Got a couple of others. Okay. There's Face to Face with Communism, and I can tell you, this is propaganda, again, directed at U.S. military personnel, and the idea is this guy goes out on a 3-day pass, and the next day the communists take over just out of nowhere. And that's the plot of the story. And this other one, Operation Abolition, the story of communism in action, is about people who were sick of the House Un-American Activities Committee. This committee run by Joe McCarthy, the guy who made McCarthyism, that basically that was persecuting political dissidents in the U.S. And this is about basically turning opposition to that into some sort of big communist conspiracy that's terribly nefarious. So either of those sound good. Oh, I see we've got somebody else has popped in. It depends, I guess, on who you're talking about. I mean, like, when I talk about communists, I'm not talking about either of those, because I don't think that either of them is particularly communist. I'm talking about people who are fighting for a society that is classless, moneyless, and stateless. I usually do that in another order, which is why I had to pause there and try to remember where I was. Where production is run democratically and done for the purpose of fulfilling human needs, organized sort of on the principle of to each according to their needs, from each according to their ability, that sort of thing. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about communism. When these people are talking about it, they're talking about anything they don't like. They're talking about anything the U.S. finds annoying. Like, Okay, let's do face-to-face with communism. It's a relatively short one. I mean, a lot of people, when they're referring to it, yeah. Armed Forces Information Film, 1951 this is. Yes, this is primarily meant to manipulate soldiers. As will be obvious from the fact that the main character is an airman. Face to face with communism? Like, I mean, and I should note, these are contentious terms. Like, you'll find people who will describe themselves as communists and will actually have a totally different view on it to what I'm talking about. I mean, I have a particular approach to it. I'm an anarcho-communist. I'm an anarchist communist. You know, you've got people who are big on the Soviet Union, who are the Marxist-Leninists, is their term for themselves. And their ideas, what the Soviet Union and allied states were doing, and some still are, is the way to get to communism. Like, they don't claim that it actually, I mean, only, the U.S. and, anti-Soviet propaganda claims that what was going on there was communism. The claim that is made by, the Soviet Union, or, say, Vietnam, or on and off by North Korea, although it seems to be more on than off lately, but for about 11 years they were excising the word communism from everything, including their constitution. They'll say that what they're doing in those countries is the way we get to communism. I disagree. I think if that was the way to get to communism, it would have happened by now. I think it's actually a dead end and ends up going in the other direction. That doesn't change the fact that a lot of the time, a lot of these countries have managed to do quite a lot to raise people's living standards. That's real. I mean, a lot of them have done some pretty impressive stuff with that at different times, often in very adverse conditions, but in terms of being a way to get to communism, bullshit, that just doesn't work. Well, I mean, the way it is it's sort of, the way it's done in these societies is they say, yeah, I mean, we're basically doing things more or less in a capitalist sort of a way where, you know, where instead of the bosses you used to have, now you've got a party bureaucracy that is your boss and all that sort of shit. But it's building towards communism, but it never gets there. And I personally think it couldn't get there because the trouble with the thing about states is they want to preserve their power. Yeah. Okay, and the punchline of this is that it's actually supposedly communism, or what? Yeah. See, I mean, the way my analysis of it is basically that you have that states are always going to want to oppose communism because people who benefit from having the power of states don't want a stateless society, and communism is a stateless society. So when you have a situation where moving towards communism and state power, where you have to choose between those things, and that happens fairly often in one of these societies, the state's always going to come down in favor of state power, one way or another. This happens to be the story of Sergeant Jim Conway. I like it. This happens to be the story of, like, this is a thing that actually happened. It just as easily, it could have been the story of what? I mean, you gonna finish the fucking sentence? Corporal Stanley O'Brien, U.S. Army, or Seaman Paul Ross, U.S. Navy, or Staff Sergeant William McKay, U.S. Yeah. Okay, we get the point. Obviously, it doesn't matter which branch of the U.S. military the person is. What we mean is that it could happen to anyone, even to you. Why didn't you just say that in the first place, then? I mean, you wrote this down. You had to create these titles. Somebody actually had to physically cut this stuff back then to put the title cards on the film. Why not just say that? It sounds like you're, like, stumbling over words. Oh, I think I know what we're talking about. This is a Kurt Vonnegut story. I had to read this in English class too. But I mean, it's not really. I'm not sure what exactly what exactly that was mocking. I remember it well though. But in this case, I mean, it isn't describing something that because again, the only reason that that works. First of all, communism doesn't say that, you know, people are not, that there aren't going to be differences in ability. The whole point is that nobody is supposed to be required to do more than they actually can do, and they're not meant to live with less than they actually need in order to live. You know, so it's not, if somebody is able to do more, we're going to hobble them somehow or something like that. And also, I mean, in that story, as I remember, there was a state. So, I mean, if it was meant to be mocking communism, it doesn't really... Yeah, I imagine so. I mean, it's Vonnegut, and not actually sure where Vonnegut tends to stand. It tends to have pretty sound opinions whenever I've seen him on anything. This could happen to anyone, even to you. At this point, we've only got about 10 minutes left, so this is going to be a little preview.
On a 3-day pass. Home's a little too far to go, so...
Yeah, shit, I remember reading this. God, what was it called? Good short story, handicapper general. Harrison Bergeron. That's what it was called. I remember it. I had to read this in 10th grade.
I'm just looking for a change of scene and some good factor. And, well, maybe a little fun. I like this town. Quiet enough to relax. friendly enough to get acquainted.
And you can stand around whistling in it. No, I like that skirt. I actually have one like that.
No, thank you. Listen, kid. I'm on pass. When I'm on pass, I don't want to read nothing about nothing. So run along.
Does that... He doesn't want to read anything that's about nothing.
Okay.
I love how in this story, it just comes out of nowhere, which is totally not how any of this works. I mean, if you're going to have a total shift of power, usually there's some shit going on before that. It doesn't just have, you don't just have, like, from one day to another, everything seems totally okay, and then somebody else takes control. Usually there's a lot of discontentment in the society and a lot of conflict that leads to that happening. God.
It's about 7 o'clock the next morning. I'm fast asleep in this room at the Decatur Hotel on the square. I don't know how long it's been going on, but...
Oh shit, it's communism. That means marching bands. Playing the same fucking marching band music that US marching bands playing? Wow, that's such a shitty... I mean, I happen to know that by 1951, people had actually produced, like, flags for a possible future, like, Soviet States of America or something like that. There were people who actually were thinking along those lines and had ideas for flags. They all look better than that piece of crap. What, he's gonna complain to the front desk about the fact that there's a marching band? What is the fuck's the front desk gonna be doing about that?
How do you expect a guy to sleep with all that racket going on out there? If you'd wise me up against this shindig, I'd have gone someplace else.
If you knew about it, Sergeant. In the paper.
Yeah. Well, if I was running a hotel, I'd have enough...
Got the mail ready? There it is. Is this everything? Everything. Okay, you'll get it back on the phone.
Yeah, that's not how that works. Like, when the whole idea of reading the mail and censoring it is that people are not supposed to be aware that it's going on. The idea is that people will say shit they're not supposed to say and reveal, plans or whatever, and they get caught. You don't just do it right in front of people. Okay. I mean, how the U.S. got involved, that's a somewhat longer story than we've got time for, but the short version is this. Basically, the U.S. first backed France, which was trying to recolonize Vietnam, and spent huge amounts of money rearming France so that they could try to take Vietnam back. Vietnamese forces won, and kicked the French out. They were defeated at Dien Bien Phu. There's actually a first-person shooter, a Vietnamese video game about the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, called 7554, because that's the date that they won. So the thing is that the U.S. really did not want the Vietnamese to actually be in control of Vietnam. So they continued to find ways to support indirectly. Now, there was a plan to have UN-sponsored, UN-monitored elections in all of Vietnam, including a vote to deal with the final status of the country and stuff like that. The U.S. knew they were going to lose this. Nobody wanted a divided Vietnam. Nobody really wanted the government the U.S. was trying to push on South Vietnam. It was made up of people who had no... Well, because the U.S. wanted to have control. I mean, the U.S. just won. The U.S. had just won World War II. They were in a position where they could more or less control everybody, except basically, other than the Soviet Union, they had just an absolute ridiculous amount of power because everybody else got wrecked. I mean, even the countries that in the Allied countries that won the war got wrecked. Yeah, I mean, it has to do with markets and natural resources and just being able to project power into the region. Because, Vietnam borders on China. The U.S. would like to, have a position where they can directly influence events there. I mean, it's about power and it's about markets and sources of cheap labor and natural resources and stuff like that. In the end, it comes down to money, always. I mean... But, so, the U.S. had this idea, they had this puppet government that they set up in... Oh, well, because Mexico already was... Yeah. Because Mexico was already basically under U.S. control. Canada was also... Canada... The U.S. is totally is totally up Canada's ass. And has been... really since World War II, since Britain sort of faded. And Britain had already kind of acknowledged that they were going to be second fiddle to the U.S. from now on. I mean, although they didn't realize just how much of a shit show the place was going to end up being, 70 years later. Where, fucking 3 governments in so many months. Jesus. It's impressive. So, I mean... The U.S., Latin America, the U.S. already more or less had under their thumb. That was already decided when the Spanish Empire left, and so that wasn't really an issue. But the Far East, on the other hand, all these European colonial powers had been kicked out, first by Japan and then by their indigenous populations, and were failing to take them back. Britain was trying to get back Malaya, the Dutch were trying to get back Indonesia for a while. They all failed. I mean, in the end, they all failed. It took varying amounts of time for them to fail, but they all failed, and the U.S. wanted to benefit from their defeat. Because then you've got a position you can push your companies can, get preferred treatment in all sorts of places. It opens up markets, it opens up resources, all sorts of shit like that. And to a certain extent, it was a matter of just saying what we say goes. I mean, when you read declassified documents from this period, from to the end of World War II, where it was clear how it was going to end up, in the late 1940s, early 50s, I mean, the level of triumphalism is really hard to overstate. They basically just realized that the world had just been handed to them on a silver platter. I'm talking about, U.S. policy planners in Washington, people like George Kennan or Paul Nitze, top global policy planners in the State Department, the U.S., the Department of War, later Department of Defense, and stuff like that. And so they wanted to go out, reach out, and get their hands on it. And, France had failed to hold on to Vietnam, so the U.S. wanted it. It had, at that point... Yeah, they didn't... And plus, you had the Vietnamese, National Liberation Movement, the people who fought the Japanese on the side of the U.S. at the time, with help from the U.S. at the time. They also had fairly strong Marxist-Leninist influence. And didn't like the U.S., didn't want the U.S. to take over. They wanted, above all, their independence. And they weren't going to just do whatever the U.S. said, and so the U.S. didn't want them. There were a bunch of other wars in between, though. I mean, yeah, there's also the U.S. war in Korea, there's the war in Vietnam, you've also got various invasions of Haiti and the Dominican Republic during that period. A huge number of sort of proxy wars where where there was some kind of a war going on and the U.S. would decide to arm one side while kind of nominally staying out of it. And basically, the U.S. has been constantly at war for about the past 100 years. I don't think there's been a period of all that much duration where the U.S. wasn't fighting somebody. Like a couple of years in the 90s, maybe. Yeah, and okay. Officially, it began. The official U.S. version is it began in 1950 and ended in 1953. But the thing is, the U.S. had invaded Korea in 1945. If you look up MacArthur's proclamation, oh, believe me, I understand about shitty history classes. If I relied on what history class taught me, I wouldn't know anything. I do a lot of reading. So, you know a show called MASH? That's set during this war. But the thing that doesn't get mentioned, unless you read the academic histories, is the U.S. invaded Korea and occupied it in 1945. After the Koreans had, with some Soviet help at the end, kicked Japan out already. They were already liberated. The U.S. had absolutely no business there, but the U.S. had made a deal with the Soviet Union that they got half of Korea. Without asking anyone in Korea's permission. So the U.S. Immediately crushes the government that they were trying to build in Korea, the first independent Korean state in, like, nearly 40 years, and imposes a puppet state in the South. I mean, these days it's somewhat more independent because Koreans in the South have fought to democratize the state and to create some space for independence. But the U.S. still has ultimate control. Yeah, they do not get a break. The U.S. invades them, occupies them, and between 1945 and 1950, the U.S., according to these are like estimates from mainstream historians, like Bruce Cummings, for example. If you want to read about this, he's got some very good books. They killed 100 to 200,000 South Koreans between 1945 and 1950. Then, it's not entirely clear who fired the first shot, but eventually the northern side, which at that point was no longer occupied by anybody, the Soviet Union left in 1948, and had even failed to get their guy in charge of the government in the north, so that basically there was an occupied part of Korea in the south and an unoccupied part, and the unoccupied part decided, after some provocation from the south, it's not clear who fired the first shot. There are conflicting accounts. I mean, there's some indications that there may have been some shooting from the south before this North invaded, but in any case, the North invaded and turned the thing into a full-scale war. Although, I mean, you can't really say... Invaded is a bit weird, because it was Koreans crossing a line drawn by Americans to go to the rest of their country, and a lot of people in the South were happy to see them at the time, because the U.S. wasn't being very nice to them, and the state that they were living under was a fascist dictatorship. I mean, they had one dictatorship after another till like the late 1980s. So, and this, I'm talking about South Korea now. So, then there's a war for 3 years. The U.S. manages to kick the DPRK back behind the 38th parallel, and they could have just called it a day. But instead, they said they were going to actually cross the 38th parallel and try to take over all of Korea. Yeah, Korea has had, before the division in 1945, Korea had the same essential borders for 1,000 years. I mean, it is a very rare country that has actually been on the map in roughly the same shape for 1,000 years. No, God, it was not a divided country. I mean, you go back 1,000 years, and Korea is roughly the same, and Korea has had basically the same borders. This dividing line, which was drawn by the U.S., the 38th parallel was an idea cooked up by two mid-level U.S. military officers at the request of the State Department. And the whole idea was the U.S. wanted to have Seoul because there was a big Japanese military base. The U.S. led to the division, and the U.S. and the Soviet Union had made a deal at Yalta that they were going to divide Korea. And then the 38th parallel comes into it because, as I was saying, the State Department asked these two officers. One was Dean Rusk, and the other one is a guy I can never remember the name of, but he has a weird last name. I mean, before the U.S. came in, the Koreans were trying to rebuild, and they were forming what they called People's Committees, 인민위원회, in both the North and the South, in order to form what they were calling the Korean People's Republic. And the Soviet Union was largely keeping out of day-to-day administration. We know now from the open Soviet archives they didn't really have any long-term plans for the place, and by 1948 they left. They did what they came to do, which was to kind of help people get up and running in the North, and then they left. And the North didn't even have the guy in charge they wanted to put in charge, which was they wanted Cho Man-sik, but Kim Il-sung ended up in charge because he was just too popular, among other things. But so there wasn't the the tension was created by being invaded by the U.S. mostly. But it is after 1. It is time for me to wrap up, but I will be back tomorrow night. This is a Friday, Saturday night stream. It's 11:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Time, so, I mean, if you're in Toronto, we're in the same time zone. So I will be back, and we'll be looking at the rest of this. No, actually. The Soviet Union didn't want Kim Il-sung. That's Kim Jong-un's grandfather. They wanted a nationalist by the name of Cho Man-sik. They didn't get him. Because Kim Il-sung was a national hero. This is largely thanks to the Japanese press, because he was the guy the Japanese press loved to hate. And what the U.S. put in the South was a fascist dictatorship that murdered huge numbers of people. And Koreans in the South fought against that for decades. I mean, if you look up the Gwangju Uprising, for example, I mean, there's a lot. Basically, I mean, the state the U.S. put in South Korea was horrifying. And people in Korea have been fighting to democratize it ever since. But, okay, have a good night. Thanks for joining. Interesting conversation. And here's Bruce Cummings. He has several really good books. They're available on Kindle on this subject. This is a respected mainstream U.S. historian going by just archival sources. He is not, this isn't like a controversial figure, and he's definitely not a North Korea stan or anything like that. But he does, he does tell the facts. And the facts don't look good for the U.S. in Korea. And they also don't look good for the U.S. in Vietnam. But more on that tomorrow, I suppose. Have a good night. See you tomorrow night.